Da 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 da! What's my good cheer? Welcome, everybody. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes, get those notifications out, let people know I've gone live. I am so pleased, right? Especially in coming into my live. I don't know if anybody's noticed, but I'm going to give you the heads up. Look at, I am blonde again. You know, I went 6 months, 7 months, and I let my hair grow out. I have been dyeing my hair every 6 weeks since I was 16 years old. I'm 63 years old now, soon to be 64. And it's something I thought, well, you know what, Cindy, you're getting more mature. Maybe it's time to act your age. You're probably completely white haired already. I think it's time to, right, not color your hair anymore. Give your hair a little bit of a rest. I have been a bleach blonde for most part of my life, but I've tried all different kinds of colors. And you guys know, right, there's still even a little bit of pink in my hair. I have to make that decision tomorrow whether or not I want to dye my hair or my bangs pink again. I may. But I'm so pleased to be back in blonde hair color. Oh my goodness. It just boosts my mood. I did my hair. I didn't go into the washroom to look in the mirror to see how it turned out. I just let it dry naturally. Then I walked in, didn't look at the mirror, stood in front of the mirror, and I lifted my head and I went, "Oh, Cindy, that's where you are. Where have you where have you been?" But in a good way. You know, it was only in that experimentation, and if I had felt good in my dark roots coming in, because they came in pretty dark, I could barely see any gray. It was just coming in dark. And went, oh my goodness, I didn't know my hair was that dark because I've never seen my natural hair color since, like I said, 16 years old. But it isn't that experimentation. I experimented and I decided, no, I can't do this anymore. It's depressing to see that darkness, to see all that. Well, to me, that it's just a bright color for me, the blonde, right? And Eugene is here. Hello, Eugene. I'm doing good tonight. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Eugene. I appreciate that. I was just saying that today I colored my hair back to blonde. Having dingy hair did not work for me. I was just trying to, I don't know, was it act my age? Because when you do color your hair, that is kind of a persona that isn't natural. And in a lot of my lessons, it's about being natural, being genuine. And, in being genuine, I love being a blonde, right? I love being a blonde. Otherwise, I wouldn't have done that for so long, right? And like I said, it just boosted my mood instantly. And that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be doing a little bit of an experiment for the month of October. I have been in the mix of it, I think. I believe in the crazy town of what's going on in, I don't know, is it the networks that I float around in? Is it the neighborhood that I live in? Is it the hurry scurry and the wrenches that get thrown in our life? I think it's a combination for all of it. And I think it's that way for everybody, right? Like I said all the time, like we're in the same storm, exact same storm, lightning and thunder and 20-foot waves, 30-foot waves slamming into us. It's just in the floatage that we're in, right? Some of us are clinging on to logs out in the middle of the ocean, getting tossed around, right? You do the best with what you've got in that moment, right? But then there are people who are in fishing boats, and it's not like they're not struggling too, right? But they are in a different boat, and it would probably be a little bit better than clinging to a log. Then you're with the Coast Guard, and if you're with the Coast Guard, maybe you feel a little bit more secure, a little bit safer. You trust your comrades to watch your back, right? Then there's the cruise ships, and you think, oh my goodness, that they're just dancing the night away. But lots of people are afraid of storms, thunder, and lightning. I know I would probably revel in a storm out in the ocean if I was on a cruise ship. I'd probably want to be sitting or standing out on the deck and actually watching it. But for lots of people, that would be super, super scary, right? And in their own experience, it could feel and be just as bad as that person that's clinging onto the log out in the middle of the ocean with the 20-foot waves, right? And we all have different levels of tolerance. And I know my weaknesses and my strengths, right? And my weaknesses and strengths are going to be totally different depending on the experiences that I've had in comparison to you. That my strengths are going to be a little bit better, right? Right? And a lot of those experiences are going to be a lot worse. I do not have a green thumb. Well, actually, I think I do have a green thumb, but I don't appreciate my green thumb. That's what it is, right? But that's my non-interest, right? Sometimes we are talented at things, but it's not our passion, and I don't want to chase those things that are not fun, not enjoyable, something I'm not looking forward to or curious about in any way. I don't want to do things just for a paycheck, right? I want to love my jobs. I want to smile and have fun and feel relaxed and safe, right? Because those are the storms for me. Those are the storms for me. I was actually doing, we call it shadow work, right? And something that I came across in the content, in the lessons that come across my path, and I was taking in the lesson, and this woman, I think it was, I wish I could remember what her name was, but it gave me a real big revelation about myself and about some of these fears and where they come from, and how I cope with them, and how they kind of cling on into my own life, like this thing that, the ask, right? I was brought up not to ask. If I wanted anything, need anything, right? That ask would stay within the family, or I would have to achieve it or get it myself. I was working. By the time I was 10 years old, I was already working. I was paying rent by the time I was 12 years old. It wasn't very much, $100, but $100 in the 70s would have put the groceries on in the cupboards for a couple of weeks, wouldn't it? But yeah, we were not handed anything, but also some of those things that, I'm not going to say we weren't handed anything, because what we were handed, each one of us girls, was choice. We were allowed to make choices. We were allowed to dig our own holes or toot our own horn or make the right decision or be the evidence, right? When we mess up, or, how we deal with things and how we take responsibilities for the things that we do right and we do wrong. And I think that served us kids very, very well. It brought a sense of um, uh, independence to each one of us. And again, each one of us kids floated in that storm, in that dynamic family in a different way, right? And in the end, our experiences in those storms created the emotions that trigger us, the emotions that make us feel good, make us feel safe, or don't make us feel safe. And these are characteristics, right? That are different in, I would say, every family. And lots of times it causes problems, especially, say you're a divorced mom of three kids, and you have a low income job and you're away from the house because you're trying to put the roof over the kids' heads and groceries in the cupboards, right? That the TV and the video games get to be the babysitters. And then not only that, the kids end up with social issues, like real problems, because they don't have that guidance. Yes, I was able to make my own choices, right? But usually there were options in that. And if there were no options, if there were just a couple, it was a matter of making the best decision as you could. Because if you made a wrong decision, well, I never got in trouble too often for the wrong decisions. That's the good thing about free choice. You give your kids free choice. You can't cry or be angry in the choices that you make. Sometimes I think, those choices um, were given to us so that it just took the load off of my parents and having to do that. And my dad depended on the quotes that he ran the family by. We all knew the rules. He didn't have to explain them because he was the evidence in his own experience for how he wanted the kids to grow up, right? And then with my mother, right, she ran on archetypes for sure. I think my father did a little bit too, but my mother, she ran on those archetypes, and she labeled each one of her children, and each one of her children had a different experience, right? Had a different experience. And each one of us girls, there are four girls in my family, we all grew up to be so different, with so many different gifts, interests, right? My sisters aren't into doing the camping and the back road exploring that I am. Uh, but again, in some of their interests, they don't interest me either, right? And it's wonderful when you have commonalities, like me and my sister Alice. We both love thrifting, right? And we both love, you know, being that entrepreneur. We team up in that. It's a little bit more difficult now with the tariffs going on. It's just hard for shipping because people are spending more money on the tariffs than they are on the actual items that they're purchasing, right? So it has been a kind of a tough run so far going into the new year. Let me have a little sip of my juice here. But, our experience, like I said, as kids, they dictate how we're going to react to things, whether we're going to be that person that's afraid of the thunderstorms and the lightning and stuff. Where, for me, you guys, if you watched my last segment in my series this year, Ontario Provincial Parks. When I went on my trip a couple of weeks ago, I just posted my second video, but I laid in bed. Oh no, maybe my first video. I laid in bed and I had the most glorious lightning and thunderstorm. Like it was crazy, crazy. Like it was like it almost looked dangerous, crazy. I was safe. I felt safe. If I didn't feel safe, I would have driven out of there and headed into the city or something. But I was perfectly. I wouldn't have known whether I was safe or not because I conked out pretty. I conked out pretty fast. I think I got about a half an hour of that storm that tore my camp apart in the morning when I got up. Right. But, it's in finding our own interests and be accepted in that. Sometimes it's not easy, right? Camping doesn't interest my sister Tracy, so she probably would never go on those trips with me. And she doesn't like the long drives anymore because she got in a serious car accident that scared the poop out of her, right? And so those long road trips are probably something she's not interested in either, but that was through her experiences that came about, right? Because she did like going to across the border to get good deals at the grocery stores and stuff, but yeah, that's not part of her interest now, right? And with the tariffs going on, me and my sister have not been going out. And, she says, oh, I thought me and you might go out this week and do some thrifting. But what's the point when, we can't make any sales on eBay and stuff? And I said, sometimes it's just not about, right, making the almighty dollar. I would have just enjoyed hanging out with you for the afternoon because I do love hanging out with all of my sisters. Again, we're all so different, and a lot of times, you hang out and you adjust your personality and your tolerances, and you do that for your friends and for your family because they are your friends and your family, and you want them to be comfortable, and they want them to like you and enjoy being around you. But then you're not yourself, right? And, I'm very grateful, for a lot of those natural lessons that we just walked into as kids that built up that resilience, built up that understanding that there were consequences for bad decisions, right? Because there's always consequences for bad decisions, and there's always consequences for how you treat people. Oh my goodness, right? I follow a lady, and in her post this afternoon, and I don't mean to kind of go off of somebody else's great insight, but she was saying sometimes that we just well, I'm not going to talk about that because that was her sharing. That was her lesson in that, and that would be kind of like stealing somebody else's information. But a lot of time, it's in that information that we come across, that we share it out there. That's how come good ideas, right? Come to fruition. Is that the word? Where, right? Where they're built or created. Lots of times, we have these great ideas, but we don't do anything about them, right? Because we're trying to keep other people comfortable in that. And that is something that I have been working on, right? And a lot of it is attached to my codependency kind of tendencies where I'm looking for a safe place, and and you know my relationships with people and me falling falling in crush, falling in crush, falling in love, right? Getting connected to people were lots of times in that limerence. And it was something, right? And the limerence and the codependency were all tied up together, right? So lots of times you don't even recognize whether you really love somebody or if somebody just needs you. You know what I mean? That somebody is just with you out of convenience because it's comfortable, right? And, I've never been that person. That's why, I didn't fight it when my marriage fell apart because, um, that feeling of being an adventurer in my own right, it was right. We had become two different people. We had not grown together, right? When you don't grow together, you grow apart, right? And if you don't grow together, you don't get to know each other. And you don't get to know if somebody, because you're not even interested in somebody, will think, oh, they're not interested, or they'll think I'm silly for a little thunderstorm or lightning, and right? And then we don't voice what the problems are, and we feel like we're imposters, right? We feel like we're characters and we're not our real selves. I understand that. I grew up that way. All my relationships as a young adult, right? Even up into my 40s and 50s. I think probably once I hit my 40s, uh, I decided that I was going to live my best life. Sometimes we have those experiences, right? That wake us up to say you're wasting time. You are not doing this for the right reason, right? And I did a lot of that. I did a lot of that. And so what I'm doing right now is I want to do things for the right reasons. And I want to make sure that, that I'm taking care of myself, that I'm not putting myself in those situations, right? I'm not afraid of thunder and lightning, but if I was afraid of thunder and lightning, I would like to think that I would make sure that, I was in a comfortable space, that I was okay, that I was feeling safe and comfortable in something that I know is going to agitate me in that. One of my fears, swinging heights. I have no idea. And that's the truth, where that fear came from. Um, for me, when you go to like the exhibitions, where all the rides and stuff like that, the scariest ride for me in my imagination would be that, like, it's like a carousel and it goes up in the air and it has like gazillion chains all around it. And at the end of each chain is a chair, and you're strapped into the chair and you're just like whipped around in the air and no control. Like you have no say. You're putting all your faith into the safety, right, of that chain and of that carousel and in the mechanisms and in the employees running those mechanisms. And that's right. That's for me a little bit too much. Maybe I use that swinging heights as an analogy for any ride at the exhibition, right? Because of that sense of control that I want to have for myself. And I have every right, because that's how I'm built in my experiences. I have that sense of control, right? But no matter what, I am partnered with myself. Everybody is partnered with themselves, whether they know it or not, right? And, in that partnership with themselves, right, it's going to be in their experiences that's going to dictate the people that they grow up to be. right? And that's why I say, I'm grateful for the lessons of my life because, if it wasn't for my dad's quotes, I would never have recognized where I sat or where I've been sitting in, right? In my relationship, in my ideas about life, because it's what we resonate with, right? It's how we feel in those experiences. Yeah, I don't feel bad or guilty at all for having a sense of control because I understand in that sense of control it keeps me balanced because I understand that as much as Cindy is here, those other parts of me are here too, right? And those other parts of me will definitely take care of me, right? If I steward in the same respect, right, to those other parts of me. And there are lots of parts of me, just like that chain with the seat on it swinging around up in the air, terrifying me. I would never do that to myself, right? I would never put myself through some. And lots of people do. They go, you got to overcome it. If you had a really bad experience and you hurt yourself when you jumped out of the plane and you said you're never going to jump out of a plane again, if you get right back in that parachute, right? And jump out of the game, that you can overcome your fears, right? But lots of people, they can't do that. Just like my sister Tracy, she can't do those long road trips anymore because she has that agitation and that anxiety that's come about from a serious car accident, right? And for each one of us, it's going to be different, but we don't delve into why we have the problems. We just understand we got problems. We go, oh my goodness, I got to resolve that. And what do? Right? You force yourself to go on those car rides, you right? It's like sometimes it is very good for yourself. I'm thinking, when you have to go to the doctor, if you have to go to the doctor, you have to go to the doctor. You just accept it and you do it. And again, because it's your own well-being, you just have to trust in the doctors, and that's part of the scary part of it, right? For myself, I'm not a big fan of hospitals, but I do it, right? Like yesterday when I went and got my flu shot and I got my COVID shot, right? I did that for myself because that's part of being a partner, right? In taking care of myself in my own sense of well being. If I didn't do that, I would be agitated. I would be nervous. I might be standoffish, right? In those connections in my everyday, day to day, because I didn't get my shots. And, right, I'm going to get a flu or I'm going to get pneumonia or something, right? And I don't lightly put my well-being in other people's hands that way. Nobody would accuse me of being a strain on the medical system, though I have been a recipient of kindnesses, right? That Canadian dental plan is right. It was such a great thing that they did there. It costs so much money. I bet you every pensioner, every low income parent with kids and stuff, they got on that plan. My dentist said that she could not believe how busy she was, right? Well, I can believe how busy she was because even for myself, I needed dental work and I put it off for quite a while, a couple of years I put it off, right? Only because of the funds and stuff. So I think the government, that was a total surprise too. I didn't hear anything about it until my sister mentioned it, and I just applied right away. And right within a couple of weeks, I already had my dentist appointment and everything. It was absolutely, absolutely amazing. Right? I'm grateful Our country treats us real well. We have to remember it's in that privilege of each country that we live in. And if you look at each country that we live in as a different vehicle in the storm, right? Maybe it would be a little bit more manageable, right? At very least, knowing what you're floating on, what you've got to work with, right? And that's always a good thing. I always want to know. I want to be one step ahead, right? That curious mind. I want to know what's going on, but I also at the same time knowing that if I want to know what's going on, I'm going to be sacrificing in other things that I want to do, the other things that I want to get done, right? Those goals, those dreams can be interfered with because we get sidetracked about what's going on in other people's business, right? What's going on that is going on probably on the other side of the world that doesn't, right, affect me, doesn't affect my community, and there isn't anything in the moment that I can contribute in any way, right? I'm not a stir the pot kind of person. I just, right? More than likely, I would back down. Doesn't mean there wouldn't be a lesson when I back down. Okay, you win, but rah, 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 right? And I will tell, well, no, I wouldn't tell you I told you so because anybody, you know, would would understand that, oh my goodness, right? We should be allowed to make mistakes. And again, in that trust and wanting to have control, right? We're not wanting to put ourselves in somebody else's hands, right? We don't want to be at the end of some chain up in the air, sitting in a canvas seat that could just snap at any second, right? So each one of us gets to make those choices. And again, we make good choices and we make bad choices, right? The best we can do is the best that we can do in those choices. And that's part of the learning process, right? And if you fail in that, well, it's an opportunity to work on that little bit of never give up, brush your knees off, get up, try again, or a little bit of that humbleness, right? Because sometimes in that controlling, we think we've got our poop together, we can do it better than anybody else, and to be humbled to realize that, oh my goodness, we kind of messed that up, didn't we? Right? So yeah, a little bit of everything today, but I think something that just needed to come out in the moment. And it wasn't really anything in that lesson. It's just that one lesson that that lady was saying, and I already forgotten what it was already. But yeah, I wouldn't want to share something that was kind of somebody else's little gift, little tidbit, right? But then again, if it was, something that was pertinent that would help us or help even one person, it is worth sharing, I think. But you got to give a name, you got to give a little bit of credit, not offhand. Bad. I'm so bad with the names. It takes me so long. And I know I'm compounding that idea by just saying that, but it is true. But then again, that's one of those things that just for me it just imprints over time, right? And in that trust maybe, right? It's that build up of a friendship, that build up of acquaintance, that build up in that peership in our coworkers or in our neighbors and stuff, right? And I believe in baby steps. I believe in going slow. I have saved my butt so many times by going slow because there were decisions I wanted to make in the moment and I would have made them in the moment, just like that, right? But if you just hold on and you just keep taking in the lessons because the one lesson is just a prerequisite for the next lesson, and you don't have that one lesson that could just change the game forever, right? I have pivoted so many times, right, in the past half a dozen years, and that was one thing that I think saved my channel, because at any time I could have quit, right? I could say, oh, there's no more abandoned farms, no more abandoned houses or schoolhouses. I don't have a car anymore. All any of those could have shut me down in the moment, right? It's in our choices, you guys. Just keep going. Just keep going. Okay, you guys. It has. It really hasn't been a day. I piddled around for most of it, getting a few projects. I'm trying to hook the HDMI to my smart TV so I can use the big screen for my editing my video. It's not working out for me, but I'm just going to Google. It's more like I've been doing today periodically. But because I get frustrated in what I don't understand, I do it in baby steps. I go slow because, okay, this is right. This is too much. Let's get up, and make a cup of coffee, and right, get that light cover over it. Still, you can still see reflecting in my glasses. I have it here. I don't know where it is. Oh, I have it sitting here over my garbage pail. But I had it, and I've got the stool to go on the bed because it has to be something pretty stable. I can't have anything that's going to be wobbly because I need to get an extra 3 feet before I can even reach that light fixture. So I promise I will have that worked on for Monday. If you guys don't know, I take Saturdays off, Sunday night. Chatters Live. If you want to pop in, say hi, hang out with us. I have the most amazing crew. Hannah is part of that crew. Eugene is a part of that crew. And we have the best conversations. The days I keep my gratitude higher than any expectations, I have really good days. Could have sneezed. Excuse me. I love the gratitudes too, right? Because it has to come from the heart. And if you can recognize in the moment to be able to say thank you or express your appreciation, or even better, express it to somebody else so that somebody else can feel good, not just express it to the air. I mean, that's good. But if you can express that to somebody else, whether or not you're just walking in the door and somebody holds the door for you, even today, I went into a shop, and when I walked in, some guy was standing there, and the one guy, he walked right in when I opened up the door. He said thanks, and he walked into the store, and he just like kind of pushed himself past me. And then his friend was there, and his friend held the door for me. And I looked at him and said, oh, you're such a gentleman. Thank you so much. And I gave him a big smile, right? And it was, because sometimes it's in that expression, he'll remember my smile, he'll remember my appreciation, that nice little old lady, right? That acknowledged that he was a gentleman, that he was a good person, right? And sometimes we have to be reminded of that, because lots of times we don't feel like good people. Sometimes we don't feel like we're doing our fair share. Sometimes we think we're too controlling. Sometimes we think we're too emotional. Sometimes we think we're not good enough, right? It's all these things. And then, right, where does the good come from that? The good comes from all the little things that we do that add up, right? In that person remembering that, oh, that little old lady gave me a big smile, called me a gentleman, said thank you, made me feel good. And he takes that home to his wife and his kids, and that appreciation and that gratefulness. And look at his kids, and oh, I want my kids to grow up like that, you know when I worked in that little thrift store that put the roof over my head. The kids' parents sometimes would give them money for their little toys or whatever they would find in the aisles, and they would let them pay for it up at the counter. And I would always make such a big deal of when they said thank you. I'd always say, oh, you're just going to grow up to have so many friends when you grow up. I just, that's so amazing. And then I would compliment the mother, right? because that child learned it somewhere. More than likely they learned it from the mother. And if they learned it at school, sometimes there's a lesson in making that mistake and giving that credit to the mother, and the mother says, oh my goodness, yeah, I gotta, right, it's my responsibility to teach my kids manners and etiquette and how to treat other people and how to treat themselves, right? I didn't know. I didn't know how to treat myself. I treated myself the same way other people treated me. And that's a sad truth, right? It took me a long time to come out of that. I'm making up for it now, 100%. Okay, you guys, enough of that. Let's just get into the card a couple of minutes, and then we are going to not call it a night because I'm doing my live show earlier now. So happy. So I've got an hour to delve into whatever I want to delve into. And yeah, maybe do some googling on some of those topics that get my attention. Okay, you guys, let's just pick this card. Influence. Isn't that interesting? I'm trying to think. I'm just, right? I'm trying to think because nothing is coming to my mind in the moment. But maybe that's the idea. Influence is the evidence that brings about change. The evidence that brings about change, right? It's like what President Trump is doing right now with all these countries. Now, I'm not going to get deep into that. I kind of hear off and on, about treaties and peace and prisoner exchanges and things settling down. And I think that's so amazing. And a lot of people don't like that guy, right? A lot of people don't. But he holds influence, right? And maybe, you know there is in that control, right, in that alphaness, alpha, right, those alpha personalities, because Trump is definitely an alpha, isn't he? Yeah, 100%. And lots of times we don't want to butt heads with that, right? Sometimes it's more painful to get into that mix. Sometimes it's just a realization that somebody's right, somebody else is in control. That sometimes we do have to answer to others. It's really funny. Influence, sometimes influence is looked at as something in marketing, something like manipulation, being made to do something that you don't want to do, or be made to think something that you don't. Influence is only the evidence, right? Influence is something that inspires you to do, right. That influence could be a bad influence too. Definitely, growing up as a kid, there was all kinds of bad influence around me. But, you know, the person that I was, the person that I was expected to be, right? And that person that needed to feel safe and, right, not get into trouble, right? Not agitate anybody. That sometimes, you know, that influence will make us give up in ourselves, right? Make us readjust to somebody else's comfortableness or adjust ourselves to feel safe, right? Or comfortable. Lots of times. Okay, you guys. Influence is the evidence that brings about change, right? It is the evidence that influence that, well, look, I'm just, what came to my mind is Coca-Cola, right? Coca-Cola doesn't have a good reputation when it comes to healthy digestion of beverages, right? It doesn't have a good reputation in that. But because they have influence, right? Great jingles, great advertising, a great name, great graphics, right? A big company where they can invest lots of money. It's all in the right, but it's providing so much good at the same time if you think of all those jobs and everything. So these are the things that we have to consider. But the person who is uh, pushing for that, right? That's the outcome that they want. They will use the influence that they have. And there's a difference between influence and manipulation, right? To think something is good for you when it's not good for you. Coca Cola, right? They know they're not so good health wise for people, but they influence in a way because it's the feeling, right? Like the feeling I had when I colored my hair today, that I felt so good, right? It made me feel good. They got great jingles, right? Nice cold bottles or nice cold cans, right? Handy dandy, inexpensive. And in that influence, right? They got us. We are soft drink drinkers. It's been a few months now. I really have been weaning myself off. It's not like I haven't had any sodas. I have on my trip. I took a few with me, but it's something that I work on in my baby steps, knowing that, right, it's not necessary. It's something that I emotionally do, right? I am emotionally attached to the the Coke Zero, right? I'm emotionally attached to that, but it's not something that does me any good, right? And I'm proud of the effort. That's all I'm going to say, right? Because I do. It's just like I gained 10 pounds, right? Before I went on my trip, I went off my diet, right? And, uh, and I gained 10 pounds back, right? And I haven't even been having um, really bad, really bad food. I'm saying that as I remember that I had pumpkin pie today. It's the holidays, you guys. They're and those Thanksgiving and Christmas that the pumpkin pie shows up, and pumpkin pies is one of my favorites for sure. Okay, now I'm babbling. I'm going to call it a night. If you want to pop in on Sunday night and hang out with us, great crew. They jibber jabber more than I do. If you don't, then I'll be back on Monday, and yeah, I'll be working on my next video of my trip. And the next part that we're going to is Aaron Falls. I don't know how much footage I have in that, but we're going to put it together, right? The last one was an hour and 45 minutes. It was a long one. It was a lot of work putting it together, too. Okay, you guys, that's my good cheer. And we'll see you Monday.